Welcome to the Generation Fit podcast. I'm Coach Chris with Coach Benji. Today, we talked about how to get rid of your skinny fat body.
Go, guys. So, Chris, you had some questions from your audience about being skinny fat, right? Out of nowhere, all the skinny fat guys are crawling into your DMs.
Yeah, there's hundreds of people asking about how can I get rid of my little love handles, this little beer gut, even if I don't drink beer, but my arms are thin, my legs are thin. It just looks like I'm a pear-shaped human at like a regular size, like 5'6" to 5'10", and then I just look like a blob is what I get a lot.
Yeah. You know what's funny is we were talking about the insulin-resistant clients that I have before, and it's like usually the ones that have like that described, they're actually the ones who are just like diabetic. It's like everything's really skinny. They have like so much visceral fat that their stomach, it just comes out super far. So it's like I assume we're talking about the non-diabetic skinny fat people, just normal skinny fat.
Yeah, normal skinny fat guys.
Okay, so for normal skinny fat guys, not ones that are inherently disadvantaged and screwed, for you guys, well, we have to understand some basic things about how calories work, I think, first. So when I talk to these guys, I tell them I explain maintenance calories, I explain calorie surpluses, calorie deficits. And with a skinny fat guy, typically they have not much muscle on their frame, and what's there is just basically fat, right? And that's what makes the look so unpleasing. But in order to continue to gain weight, typically fat, if someone's not working out, is to be in a surplus of calories. So everyone has a certain amount of calories it takes to maintain their body weight. If you eat more than that, then you are going to gain weight. Same thing, if you eat less than that, you're going to lose weight, to oversimplify it, all right? For a skinny fat guy, I never really recommend them to right away start eating significantly less. I never right away start recommending them to eat significantly more. We actually try to focus on habits, right? Eating enough protein, getting somewhat close without overly fixating on it to that maintenance calorie amount. Because if we're eating enough protein, we're working out in the gym, we're optimizing muscle growth, right? And then if we're eating at a maintenance level of calories, we're not deteriorating that muscle growth too much. And you're not quite literally replacing fat with muscle, but you are losing fat at the same time as which you are building muscle. So that's sort of my philosophy as to how I handle clients who are skinny fat. And then depending on how their body responds to that, then we could adjust calories from there. But people try to do these drastic measures of like, oh, should I cut or bulk first if I'm skinny fat? And it's like a lot of these guys, I say neither. It's like I prefer to recomp your body, which is kind of the process that I just described.
Yeah, I think that it's also, there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. It really just comes down to what you're comfortable with too. So technically, since you're in this skinny fat realm, this almost ether of a world, there's no right or wrong. So here's what I mean. So could you lose fat first and actually push down the weight? Yes, you could actually. I do have some clients that are actually in this range, and I'll name one of them. His pseudonym is Matt because he doesn't want to be known by the internet. But the whole point is that, yeah, he doesn't have that much muscle in your frame, and you could be in a deficit, but just know you are sacrificing some muscle gain in the process. Hence why we as coaches under Generation Fit, we do recommend eating at a maintenance level,
Absolutely.
right? So you're able to lose the fat and build the muscle, especially if you're a beginner or just newer to the gym. And that's because your body has yet to respond to training stimuli, and that you're in a good realm where you're going to be building probably the equal amount of muscle and lose equally amount of fat at the same time. And that's only going to happen very few times in your life. If it's usually only in the beginning, and also when you're detrained or you just stop lifting for a couple months to a year or so. So I think the answer was always going to be it depends. But just know that you actually can do all three of them. We just recommend you start off at maintenance to just build the habits, right? Make sure you know what calorie or food that you're eating, generally speaking, with eating enough protein, whether it's by servings or by the grams per protein per day. But knowing these things will set you up for success first. And then now it's like we could probably get deeper into why we can justify, both sides of the spectrum. So like in this case is, what happens if somebody, for example, how would you justify somebody losing fat first, right? Like, let's just say they're about like 20% body fat. Like,
Yeah.
it's not drastic, but 20% body fat, and they're skinny fat, right? They're like 5'6" at 180 pounds, which is actually kind of realistic.
Yeah.
What-
So I think a few things. I think where the body fat's distributed, like if it was exactly how you described it, where it's like just in the stomach, and that's like protruding a lot, they kind of have the future prospect of looking like an Italian grandpa, then I think that typically will lead those people to be a little bit self-conscious about that. And like, I just want to get this gone as soon as possible, because they actually rather that be gone because of their self-consciousness more than actually having a muscular physique, right? So if you prefer to have less fat and just a flatter stomach than a muscular physique, then you're going to want to do that first. Although what I have noticed from at least my clients is that as soon as they say, I just want a flatter stomach, nothing crazy, 2 months in, they fall in love with it because we do the right things and they get results that now all of a sudden they're talking about how they want to go to the next level. But, you know, to convince someone that they're going to be talking that way, I mean, it's unlikely. So I'll go along with it. If someone says, hey, in the beginning, you know, I want to eat, you know, I'd like to lose this as soon as possible, yeah, we'll eat in a deficit. Or, you know, you're still in a deficit, but I mean, we could literally just have them move more because they're sitting at a desk all day while eating the same amount of food and just replacing the types of foods that they are eating without even focusing on the calorie amount for those first couple months.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to overthink it, especially in the beginning. It's like we focus on habits first anyways. There's very few people who just want to go straight into metrics and calculating macros and the numbers. So just by simple swaps, just by eating just generally whole foods, you don't even have to overthink it. Just, you know, on top of your head, it's like cookie. It's like, all right, probably should have more of that. Broccoli. It's like, probably should have a little bit more broccoli. Keep it very simple. And I guarantee you already start to be losing fat without overthinking about it before you were like, okay, I got to diet. And then in terms of cutting, right? So since you are in this skinny fat realm, here's what's really cool though. Let's say you were to diet first and you're like, I really just want to get rid of this stomach. And I do have plenty of clients who are in this realm, 100%. To really think about this, the timeline to lose fat is about 1 pound per week or 1% body fat per week, right? So if you're in the people that we work with, that's realistically 1 pound to about, 1.8 pounds. It's like 2 pounds at most if you're over like 200 pounds.
Well, I get fatter guys than you do, so for me, 2 to 2.5.
Yeah, so it just depends. Like, it depends on your body weight. Just know, like, most of my guys are actually under 200 pounds, like, right, floating at the most 200 pounds. So in that case, think of this timeline though, right? Really think about this. If you're truly going to go into a deficit, you're still going to lift, right? You're still going to lift, but you're going to go into a massive deficit first. And just for context, you're at 20% body fat and you gotta go down about at least 5, right? At least 5 to start seeing a 4-pack at rest, give or take. 5% body fat is only 10 pounds and change, which only takes you, if it was perfect, 5 to 12 weeks, right? That is nothing. That is nothing at all, right? And in terms of putting on muscle takes so much longer. So if you were going to choose a route, right? Maintenance would be number 1. Just body recomposition is the fancy words we say recomping. Eating at maintenance, hitting the calorie target, hitting the protein target, that will have you build muscle and lose fat. So net on the scale is actually going to fluctuate like this. It's going to kind of wave out week by week. It's not going to necessarily go super low nor super high. And then the second choice would probably be to be in a deficit first, in which case you just want to lose the fat. And then it takes the opposite side of the spectrum so much longer. The recommendation after being a trained lifter is 0.5 pound a week or 2 pounds a month of weight gain. And it's not all muscle. So think about the difference in that. So to gain 12 pounds, that's 6 months. 6 months. So look at the difference. So that's why I tell people, it's like, I'd rather you eat at maintenance and get the benefit of both sides first. If not, then go in a deficit so then you can flatten out and then spend the rest of your year in a lean bulk, in which case you don't have to be so stringent about all the food that you have to be intaking.
Well, and especially if you're the type of person that is not happy with how you look and you are self-conscious about it, if the whole year you set yourself up where you have a clean slate to eat in a slight surplus and, focus on lean gains, then you're never going to get to a point where you really feel that uncomfortable, which is, the best situation I think someone like that could ask for. So if, 99% of people are definitely not going to want to bulk first. I mean, if you have a bigger stomach compared to any muscle, It's like, just if you don't want to cut, definitely just stay at maintenance then. But for the people that are self-conscious, especially, it's like anyone who's considering, bulking first, it's like if you've never done it before and you get self-conscious easily, it probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah, bulking's. I do have one guy actually in this right now that wants to bulk up. And to be fair, he's not starting off in a realm of like he's being super fat. I think he's honestly 5'6",
Okay.
100. He's like 140 pounds. So yes, he's technically overweight because he has not a lot of muscle. But I was like, it's your choice. And he's like, I want to build muscle first. And guess what? That's fine. I think it's just where you are psychologically.
Yeah.
So he'd rather just be bigger in frame first, then start losing weight because he doesn't like eating a lot. Or, sorry, he likes eating food, but the amount of calories it takes consistently is hard for him. So once we go on a diet, he'll just be like, okay, I'm just going to eat like normal in terms of the protein, except for the protein. And next thing you know, he'll just lose weight just because he'll just eat till he's satiated, and then now he can't eat any more calories. And to be fair, I know his numbers, but he's basically eating 2,800 calories to be in a lean bulk. 28. So that means that's only 200 calories. So his maintenance is about 26.
And he'll build muscle quickly. That's the other thing too. If you're like slightly overweight but you don't have much muscle on your frame, yes, like it's absolutely true what Chris said. Like it takes a lot. It's a lot harder to build muscle than it is to drop fat. But if you're like slightly overweight, like technically speaking, but you weigh like nothing at all, anyways, if you are in a slight surplus and really hammering the weights and training to failure and doing like everything exactly how we're asking these guys to do, you take it very seriously, that first 3 to 6 months, you are going to build muscle a lot quicker than any other point in your life that you will beyond that point. So, typically you'll see people appear to be leaner, even if they're not, from just building muscle and pushing fat more to the surface as well. That's another thing that I do notice with these guys, where it's quite literally their body fat will not be less, but they'll tell me that they lost fat. It's like their scale didn't even go down necessarily. They actually didn't lose body fat, but just from gaining muscle, they're like, oh, wow, I lost fat. Like, I'm looking good. And it's like, sure. Like, I'm not going to tell them, oh, well, technically, like, I'm not going to do that. Prop them up. But that's something I've noticed.
No, absolutely. That's why we always tell people it's in the beginning. We just tell them it's if you train hard and then you eat at maintenance, you probably will see both the results. Obviously, results will vary in terms of if you actually lose the fat, build the muscle at the same time, whether you actually just do lose more fat. Everybody's slightly different. The whole point is, I think, first off is maintenance. Is like we will push that first as just to make sure. Then it'll be probably diet, so then you can actually lose the fat. It also just depends where you are. Because if you are like 25% body fat, then yes, you are actually unhealthy. We have to lose the fat. Like that is a major thing we do first. But if you're just generally skinny fat, like if somebody looks at you with a shirt on, you're like, okay, yeah, he probably could look better, but it's not like he's going to die. Then it really just comes down to personal choice or where you are psychologically. I just know with the most people that we ever talk to and work with, it's just, we all know all these guys want bigger arms, right? They want a thinner waist. They want to make sure they're usually their face usually also holds a little bit of fat too, and they're trying to get rid of that. So most of my clients, I would say 70% of them are at maintenance from the beginning. And then I would say 30% of them are dieting, or I should say 29% of them are dieting right from the get-go. And then 1%, the one guy is going up in weight just because he wants to fill out his shirts faster. And he'd rather just put on like 12 pounds in these 6 months and then just diet for 3 months to cut it all off.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's just where you are specifically, but just know it just depends on, there's so many things that go around. Like your training age would change this. And then also what your dieting history. And to be fair, though, most people we get, if they have dieted before, they don't chronically diet, and then they just give up blatantly, and then they just overeat, so they're actually okay.
Yeah. Well, for you, I have some guys. I have some of the craziest scenarios. I mean, I've had people that quite literally went from like 330 pounds to like 180 within a year, crash dieted, and then gained it all back again. Like, I literally have the extreme of examples that we talk about with yo-yo dieting. Like, I have people that epitomize it.
Oh, my God.
So that messes things up. But, yeah, to Chris's point, if you're his audience, I agree with everything he's saying. So don't listen to me. So that's all I'd say there. If you're Chris's audience, he's absolutely right about everything.
Well, so in this podcast, I'll shout out to a few guys here. So Matt going down about 10 to 15 pounds. Right, I think actually no, he's down 20 pounds now. But the whole point is that he's been building muscle this entire time. Obviously, not to the rate that he like. But I told him, I was like, look, you lose all this fat, We're going to spend the rest of these 6 months putting on weight. Like today, I think today is actually the call where we go over the game plan for the next 6 months in terms of
Nice.
you've lost all the fat. He went from having no packs. Like I can't show his pictures because he signed like the no photos and stuff. But he had the stereotypical like pear shape.
Yeah.
Right? And then now he's completely flat thin. He just texted me saying that he has a line going down his abs. And obviously
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's pretty sick. Now we got to go back up and do it correctly. And he's like, yes, I can finally eat my rice. And I was like, yes, you can. I was like, yeah, you basically need about 2 cups of rice and like a
On
Reese's
top of what you're doing. Yeah.
like maybe like a Reese's or a Kit Kat bar. And then like, yeah, I got 1 piece of Kit Kat or a Reese's and you can actually be back at maintenance already.
Yeah.
So it really just depends. And then in terms of just, it's funny because I think everybody thinks that you could just lose the body fat from the stomach, and it's like not even close.
Yeah. Well, that's why the V taper, I feel like you notice the biggest difference right away. It's like people put muscle on their lats, their shoulders, lose a little bit of fat, and I feel like that's the first place I see a big difference.
Yeah, we have to. In terms of programming, in terms of building muscle, it's like obviously we build a holistic foundation, but the ones that we will highlight right now is for training, your shoulders have to get wider because then you get away with having bigger shoulders. And even if you do, let's say, lose the fat, you slim down, and you obviously are going to put on muscle later, which means you're going to put on fat with it, which means your waist will go back up. But you having bigger shoulders will automatically have this illusion that you look better regardless of this the size, or in shirts especially.
It's like a fat girl that cinches her waist in with a belt, you know? It's the same thing. It's like we're creating illusions here, guys. No, it's absolutely true. When I was my fattest, so for people that have seen my Instagram profile, the link, the post that's pinned at the top, everyone's like, whoa, that was crazy. I can't believe you did that, right? It was like 40 pounds in 4 or 5 months, something like that. And at that point, though, when I was in a shirt, everyone just thought I was super jacked because my waist was naturally a little bit tinier, or there was like diminishing returns of how bad my waist gets when I gain weight. And then my shoulders just were so much wider. So everyone was looking at me in a shirt saying, oh, wow, this guy's super jacked. They didn't even consider the fact that it's like I had a belly, but, beneath my shirt. So it just goes to speak to the fact that if I wasn't working out, I just looked like a fat guy. But instead, I looked like a jacked guy that happened to be fat beneath his shirt, right? So there's pros to having a foundation in the gym. It's when you let yourself go a little bit or you overdo the bulk. It's that you still actually look good to the general public, and with a shirt on, you could argue you might even look better than someone who's really lean. So it's when you're in the gym for a while and build that foundation, it's easier to have things go right, and it's harder for things to go wrong in terms of how you perceive yourself and how others perceive you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just basically setting yourself up in a better position than most, and once you know these general things, that you put yourself in a position where you're just already looking better, feeling better than 90% of the population just by knowing, like, okay, if I should just build up my shoulders, build up my chest, maybe a little, extra emphasis on those after being in a holistic program. And then you'll just generally have a good frame to look at. And I think another point to touch up here is the lifestyle, right? I think a lot of the guys that I do come in that are corporate desk workers that are skinny fat, a lot of them have the background where they used to get away with eating whatever they wanted when they were younger, right? Whether they were an athlete, whether they just had this roaring metabolism. Then mid-20s to mid-30s happen. And you think that you can eat the same exact way that you did when you were at the younger age, when it could not be further from the truth. Here's what I mean. The way that you gain the fat, I mean, it just in this case just came around the stomach. Sure. The difference now is, when you're a kid or mid-20s, it's like you went out with your buddies in the middle of the city, having beers with the guys every Friday, Saturday night, having wings, whatever it is. Ain't the same anymore. You sit at a desk now. You don't do anything besides go to your car, drive to work, sit down at your desk, do the reverse on the way back. Your metabolism went down, quote unquote, only because your lifestyle went down. Hence why you gain fat so fast around your waist. One, biologically, we just store fat as men right around the waist, the fastest and the first foremost. But because you ate, the habits remain the same, That's how you gain all the fat. So in terms of setting yourself up for success, first, my skinny guys, for the skinny fat people, we got to get moving. We got to start doing something already. So like in terms of lifestyle, it's like walking is going to be huge, because at a certain point, you're not going to want to decrease calories. So just know, if you're getting 2,000-3,000 calories, your maintenance at the size that we mentioned and we work with, your maintenance calories, if I were to give you a number on average, would probably be like 2,000 to 2,200. And that's not a lot. That's not a lot at all for maintenance. That means dieting wise is like 1,800. You know what I mean? Like 17, 1,800, which is not fun if you're walking only. I think the average is 3,500 steps when you just go to work and back.
Well, that's the thing. You get your steps to 10,000, and all of a sudden you could eat like 2,000, 2,100, and still drop the same amount of fat as eating 400 calories less, just from the step difference. Not even from building more muscle, any of those things. It's like, I think Chris is, he probably has a bit more muscle on his frame than I do. I mean, when we cut, we both had a higher maintenance calories than the average person. But if you took like just Chris to compare to someone else that's his height, and in theory would have the same, on paper, the same maintenance calories, Chris to lose weight might start by eating like 2,500 calories, and that same person might start by eating like 1,800. Like quite literally 700 calorie difference, right? An entire two pieces of cake or piece of cake difference in terms of being able to drop fat or not, just because of his habits and how his metabolism's been built up from the muscle he's building, right? So, and it's all the little things too. It's the sleep being taken care of, the quality of the foods, and how that leads into your digestive processes and burning more calories during that period of time. It's all the little habits too. So to your point before about, hey, it took a while to, like, it's all habit based. It's like, yes, like for my guys who are even a little older I have some guys in their 50s. It's like, dude, it took 30, 40 years for you to create this horrible lifestyle and to have all these negative habits. It's like, it's okay if overnight you don't have the habits set like that. It's like, it's not going to be reversed overnight. It's like, if it takes 6 months to a year, I mean, that's great considering the fact that you've destroyed your health and fitness for the last 40 years with bad habits, right? So I look at 6 months to a year as like a very short period of time. If you guys are enjoying this podcast so far, please share with a friend who you feel like would benefit as well, because we are all about making this mission go bigger and wider. Let's get back into it.
In relativity, that's not a long time at all, right? I think that's why I think our perceptions are always off, because we're like, oh, well, I want to get this body in 6 months, right? At least for the skinny fat people, right? Yeah. And then if you're over 300 pounds, then it's like they think it's like, oh, I'm gonna lose it all in a year, and it's like, you could, but the chance of you getting it all back is very high, which is the Biggest Loser research. So that's why we always talk about habits. I just know, being a skinny fat person, it's more of the context. I think the context is just huge. Just most people think they get away with what they could have done years ago, right? And then it just drags over to their current lifestyle now. Yeah. And then one day you just wake up and you're like, how the hell did I put on 25 pounds of fat around my stomach? And everything else looks almost identical, except for the face, maybe. A little chunkier cheeks around here. Yeah. But that's literally how it gets to you. And I think it's 95% of my clientele is that. Like, they're just like, I was skinny, I played sports, I did this, I went outside and played this with my friends, and then one day I woke up and like, I look like a pear.
Yeah. And they think it's usually age based, but a lot of times it's not. It's let's say you have a 30-year-old client, it's the last 10 years since college that they had bad habits that made it so they can't get away with the same stuff they did before. I mean, you and I both know, like, the psychotic, like, guys in their mid-30s that will still go out and party and go to bars and stuff, and they could still look amazing. Like, they're still like the greatest looking people of all time. And it's like, how do they do that? And it's like, well, because in addition to doing that, which wouldn't necessarily be considered a good habit, all of their other health habits are very positive. It's like they still lift every single day. They still walk and get their steps in every day. They still eat high amounts of protein every single day. So it's like, if they do that and then they go out and drink frequently, they've still built enough of a base where it counteracts that a bit. Whereas, like, if you're just like, oh yeah, I got away with it, I was in college and I would drink all the time, and I did this and I did that, or, a lot of times they say I played a sport, like you alluded to. Well, guess what? You're not playing hockey anymore, working your desk job, sitting on your ass all day at 31. So it's not actually even the parallel of, like, I can't get away with it anymore. It's like there's other things you didn't even realize you were doing that you're no longer doing, right? Just that one parallel, for example, of like playing hockey every single night versus working at like JP Morgan, sitting on your desk.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest discrepancy, and I'll give you numbers in your head to just even understand what's going on. Let's just say you're in college, right? Let's even say you don't even play a sport, but you walked around your classes for lunch to do any sort of activity. Let's just say you were getting 15,000 steps, and that's being nice. That's just being generous. Like you probably got more in college, right? I lived on campus all 4 of my years, or off campus. The whole point was I was walking a shit ton.
Yeah.
I still have all that data. 15,000. Okay, that's not including sports. Now the average person I get that comes through the door, 3,500.
Yep.
Okay, so let's say it's a 12,000 step count differential, somewhat right, close. 12,000. So almost every 2,000 steps is 100 calories. Okay, so that's 600 calorie difference on the high end, but either way, you get the difference that you cannot be eating. So if you're eating the same way, so you're at school and you're eating like the local chicken fingers, French fries, turkey sandwich, like, yeah, you had some healthy things and you had like the late night snacks after you drank the beer. You got away with it because you were walking a lot. And now that you're not, you're doing the same thing. You're getting the corporate lunch. Then you're going home and you're getting McDonald's and sitting down eating the hamburger, the value meal. And here's Culver's. Anyways,
Culver's?
The Culver's. Yeah, it's okay. The whole point is that you don't get away with those anymore. And yes, it adds up so fast. 600, 700 calories is a lot of fun to play with. And just the fact that you just had these lifestyle habits that you forgot about. And now it comes into fruition. You're like, holy shit. 600 to 700 calories is about 3 to 4 cups of rice. One big piece of bread for a sandwich is all gone. Just like that, zapped away. Or a big muffin from Starbucks. Right? Like it's all these little things that add up, and you don't even realize it until it's too late. Okay? Yeah. That's how you build that muffin top, that pear shape, the flat tire. Right? That's what we literally talk about. This is exactly how you build it up so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we pretty much touched on everything we possibly could on being skinny fat as it relates to practical information. Is there any other questions or things you see come up with like any of your skinny fat people? Like, is there anything that I'm trying to think, like, is there anything they say or they feel like because like I think with my guys sometimes they're in a certain position where they're afraid to take certain actions because they're skinny fat. So it's like, what do I mean by that? If it's not cutting out a lot of calories right away, sometimes it's like, oh wait, like wouldn't I want to be doing that so I could lose the stomach, right? Like I think that's something that I notice from people, almost like a resistance to eating the amount of calories that they actually want to eat less because they think that that's what's going to get them the result that physically looks better. Whereas like they're fixated on like a number, right? Which is the reason they got into the same position they were previously. Whereas like we're fixated on the habits. So I have noticed that a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed that with your guys.
Yeah. I think I do have people who are more fixated than others on the weight scale. I just tell them that I think one of the greatest quotes that I hear from our mentors is like, you can measure the competence of somebody based off of the metrics, the quantity and the quality of their metrics. And the whole point is that we track more than just the weight. So weight is obviously one, and then we take the average. But yes, when people ask about their concerns, we make sure we tell them it's not just about the weight and the weight average. You also have your waistline. You also have your shoulder width. You also have how you feel subjectively, more energy throughout the day. Are you going to the bathroom regularly? Like, there's so many other metrics that
you have
mean
your pictures,
a lot.
right? You have your
progress
your
pictures. Yes, yeah. Progress pictures in the same lighting, in the same room. The whole point is that we look at them and make sure that things are happening. So when your weight doesn't move as much, which happens a lot. I mean, I could show you my entire screen and be like, this guy, in the first 3 months didn't have their weight move at all. And they still look a lot better. And you're like, well, obviously things happen. I had somebody on my story. I record all these calls now, and with their permission, I'm like, look, if you say something that's awesome, I'll gladly post it. And it's because, Mr. Spilsbury was like the same thing. He's like, Chris, we didn't move. Like, my weight didn't move like the first 3 months, and now it's like, well, Chris, I'm wearing my pants, and I dropped like 2 sizes. I was like, I haven't worn khakis in a year, and I actually fit them now, right? So. Yeah. there's plenty of other things that are going on. For skinny fat people, it's going to be like your shirt's getting tighter around the chest and the shoulders, especially if you wear dress shirts or polos. If you wear khakis, slacks, it will definitely be that you have to start wearing a belt or that your old pants fit better, right? But the scale has yet to move, right? That's the biggest thing. So that's why I tell you. And then progress pictures, we make sure we always look at, what the waist looks like, how much fat's being distributed around the arms, the chest, the shoulders, right? Based off the same room, the same lighting, give or take. The whole point is that we can have an idea of what's happening. We just want to make sure that, like, yes, the scale does tell us something in the sense of, like, yes, you shouldn't be gaining 5 pounds up, 5 pounds down in like a week or two. But within a range, as long as it's healthy, then you're fine. And it's perfectly good. As long as you're getting stronger at the gym, you're hitting your protein target, if you're following habits with calories or hitting your calorie targets based off those metrics and your step count, we know exactly where you are. Like, that is it. That is even for all you corporate people, all the KPIs that we need to know to make sure you're in the right realm anywhere in the world.
Yeah. No, I think you couldn't have said it better. I got nothing else unless you want to talk about Mao Zedong again. He's probably the most mentioned person on this podcast.
My boy Mao.
For anyone watching this now and like not having seen past episodes, are like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? It's like they're just talking about fitness the last 30 minutes, and then just Mao Zedong got an honorable mention. So shout out to our guy that persecuted Chris's entire family.
Yeah, basically. Well, I guess we could touch up with. I think we do have some followers for not even just our podcast, but just people. But in terms, I guess, in the life of. So I think a few things I've noticed. So yes, I did go to a Culver's. Which is like a fast casual McDonald's style. Okay, so that makes any sense to you whatsoever. The whole point is that it's like a step up from McDonald's. Okay. So probably it's like technically on the same level as Five Guys. Technically.
Okay.
Right, it's like Five Guys-esque, all right? And it's made from Wisconsin, so there's stuff like that. It was okay. Nothing crazy.
The logo.
It's just Culver's. It literally just says Culver's and script.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It's a Midwestern thing. It's from Wisconsin. But I thought it was just okay. Nothing too fancy. 2, it has been averaging -10 where we are.
Average?
It's been the average in the past week.
That's crazy.
Okay? In the middle of Minnesota suburbs. I won't say the city just because of my anonymity there. And then lastly, son goes to daycare. 2 weeks in. One kid comes back, and there's a sign at the door that says, "Oh, one of our kids had pneumonia." So then now our kid has pneumonia, or mucus filled up in his lungs, gives it to the entire family. So me, Alyssa, her parents, all of us went down like a sack of potatoes. I've been absolutely ripped this entire time. This is the first day I'm actually talking without something stuck in my nose. I'm still blowing out my nose while we speak.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I've been sick I've been on and off this whole month. Wasn't sick for a good year and a half on the calendar year, but out of nowhere it just comes. I think it's actually a combination of everyone's getting sick now with how just it's even colder in New Jersey, and I train 2 clients in the morning on Saturdays from my in-person days, and it's freezing in there. It's like an ice box right now, and I think just prolonged staying outside and not having that gradual exposure to the cold has probably just made it more conducive to me being sick, because I think there's guys that could sit in the cold all day long, and they're like the Wim Hofs of the world, right? At the extreme, but it's it came from, it's like building muscle. You build a foundation and you gradually build it up. But when you live in New Jersey and the difference is 100 degrees in this winter, 100 degrees in the summer, this winter it's 10 degrees outside. If you're staying indoors most of the time, you don't really get a chance to build up almost a resistance to the cold. Whereas I think your immune system does sort of build up that resistance if it's gradual.
Yeah, 100%. There has been, in the Northeast at least, the norovirus has been taking out people by the storm.
Yeah, I could have that too. I don't even know.
Oh, you want something that's really messed up? So norovirus has been one of the most. It's not even deadly, right? It's basically just a more advanced version of the cold, from what I understand. Basically, it took down all of New York. All of New York City was decimated by it.
Yeah.
When I was living in New Jersey in Hoboken, it's like when the C word. I'm trying not to get canceled here for some odd freaking reason.
Yeah.
The whole point was that one person got it and the entire town got it, and it was 95 percentile. Everyone went to the same urgent care that week, right? So that's how fast these things spread. And in terms of here, I think that's like the whole thing is the joke is that we, the parents, pay for daycare or we pay for the kids to get sick to get us sick, and then to send them back. That's like the running joke because that actually is what happened because all of us because his grandmother has yet to go to work this whole week. It's already Wednesday, so she just took PTO. But yeah, all this is kind of messed up in terms of how it's all happening.
You ever think though, like I'm curious the extent to which the entire population would be sick and how severe we would treat certain diseases or viruses, viruses specifically. If we just generally had stronger immune systems as an aggregate of this country. Like I wonder how the news would treat it because there would be less people that perceive viruses as scary if they were more confident in their health and they understood more about how this works. Like, you ever wonder that?
Yeah, but I mean, I can't. Yes, but I've also thought to myself, most people don't even think at a very basic level.
Yeah.
What, for example, I can relate it to our field. People don't even know what they eat for lunch or for breakfast, so I can't imagine how far they can think in terms of the future pacing. I don't even think they understand like what any sort of long-term future goals that they have. So it's for themselves. It's what I mean. Like they just think like, oh, I have to eat because I'm hungry. It's not, oh, I probably should eat these foods because I want to be healthy and also want to look a certain way.
Yeah, like I want this, so this is the things that make sense for me to do if I want this. Instead of just saying like, man, wouldn't it be great to be rich? Like if only I won the lottery. Like this is what I do. It's like, well, if you want to be rich, like why do you want to be rich? And what would you do to get there instead of scratching a lottery ticket? Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that.
And then in terms of you not getting sick, I also think that we spent a year. Also, yeah, we spent a year and we cleaned up your diet. Like, one, we cleaned up your diet. Two, I don't think the stress levels were as high. I guess we always had stress. We're men. But the whole point is, like, it hasn't been, like, running. In this case, you have two things going on. I have this business, clients.
Yeah, and my eating has been worse until, like, just about the last couple days, actually. So I don't think that could compensate.
Yeah. Like, to be fair, like, that's one. Two, it's, like, vitamin D levels. Like, we're definitely getting exogenous vitamin D right now. So it's, like, how much are you actually absorbing? It just depends on... well, your body, how much fat you're intaking, magnesium, zinc, K2, whatever. But I actually have thought about that because my parents never got sick. Like the time that you came over every single time, whether you felt under the weather, whether I felt a little bit under the weather, whether Elias felt a little sick when he was growing up, they have yet to get sick one time. Like maybe a sniffle, maybe a cough, maybe like a small cough. And I remember a small sniffle out of one of them.
What's their upbringing in childhood in China at the time? Was it still like pre-60s America where it was like, all right, like if you live, if you get these viruses and colds and all these issues and you're not vaccinated but you made it through, then like you're good, like you're a beast. Like is that how it is for your parents or no?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was basically that they came from Taiwan. Like it was still Taiwan. It was still part of Taiwan, China, whatever you want to call it. The whole point is that it was definitely strong, like survival of the fittest. One, and then two is, well, at least my father came here when he was very young. So at the time, I think it was only like a total of 12 vaccinations. You know what I mean? From baby, like he grew up in the U.S. after 4 years old.
Yeah.
So it's only like maybe 12. I'm probably screwing that up. It's low, right? Now the schedule counts for 72 until you're like 21, right? Like that's.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a lot. So, you'll actually get canceled for that.
Yeah, imagine just like saying that.
But yeah, the difference, all I'm saying is in terms of also what we have, it's vastly different. You look up the formulation for ketchup in 1990, 1980, it's different than what it is now. If you look up the flour material of what was back in the 1970s, 1980s, it's very different. The glyphosates are a lot higher now because we have this. It's also like, I'm not here to argue which side. I'm just saying it's, the amount caught in all these things that we get is so much higher because we have so many more people to feed, and also the convenience of it all. Like, look at bread, right? If you just like looked at bread, it's like my parents personally don't eat bread anymore because it's like you're battling with like bleached flour, glyphosates, sugar, and it's basically everything that you would see that like every holistic doctor is like you cannot be eating this. Generally speaking, like that is that's what's getting you sick. Yeah. On top of keeping you sick. And then people were like, oh, I'm going to have a Campbell's chicken. I don't know if you ever had the Campbell's chicken noodle soup in a can, but half that stuff is like...
It's bad, right?
Yeah, it's fortified, it's enriched, bleached.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the stuff where it's like, my skin freaks out just from having like enriched bleached wheat flour, fortified, right, with all the added vitamins in there. Like if you just take rice without that versus rice with that, my skin will react differently.
Yeah, it's like Hispanic rice, like Goya. If you ever look at Goya rice,
I haven't looked at it, but
yeah, if you look at, like, for example, I think the easiest ones are like Spanish rice, very cheap Spanish rice, not the legit ones, or Hispanic rices. They always have bleached enriched flour. It says enriched wheat flour, which means it was bleached, and then they had to add back B12, B3, B6, or whatever, pyroxate, and all these other ones. And it just goes to show you how it's because it's cheaper, and then you purchase cheaper, which means that's when people tell me, like, hey, I have all these like hormonal issues, and I eat all these cheap foods, and I'm like, well, let's just clean up these let's just get a basic rice that the ingredient literally just says rice and just see what happens. But yes, so just a little tidbit about us. I know it's been a little bit of time since we actually caught up with some of our viewers. We actually do have like more than 15 viewers on the podcast themselves.
Let's go. All right, guys, thank you for watching. If you got value from this episode and you want to continue to get value, subscribe to this podcast on whichever platform you're watching it, and give us a follow on our Instagrams. Mine's BenjiTucker.fit.
And mine's Coach_Chris Lee.
We will see you guys next time.